fibers and more tools, it's your fourth and final week of basic training. Hoo-ah!
It's who I am, a little rare, some savoir-faire, and some mystery, putting it all together, doing what I do, doing what I do.
Hi, I'm Tamara Berg. Welcome to the fourth and final week of basic training. We've covered wire basics, we've covered chain basics, we've covered soldering, and now we're going to move into a little bit of a different direction and talk about beads. Jewelry making usually begins for people with beads. I know it did for me. So once you've got the fundamentals of beading down, we're going to move into the next step, which is knotting beads. And once you've mastered knotting, the entire world of beads and jewelry making will open up for you. So let's get started. First thing that we're going to talk about is the different kinds of fibers that beads can go on. We've talked about using steel cable with a nylon coating in past shows, and it's a great element to use when working with heavy beads or gemstone beads, but you can't knot it, so we're not going to be using that one today. What we are going to be talking about is some other fibers. The first one I'm going to be talking about is nylon. So nylon fiber comes in lots of different colors and lots of different diameters and lots of different strengths. One of the great things about nylon is that it's a strong fiber, it's not prone to fraying, and it doesn't decay like natural fibers do because it's not a natural fiber. It's inexpensive, but it does tend to stretch. Another choice would be silk fibers, and again, it comes in lots of different colors and lots of different diameters and lots of different styles. I prefer to work with silk because I think it moves a little bit more smoothly than nylon. Both nylon and silk come in spools, but I really like to use these pre-measured cards that have 3 meters of silk thread on them because they have a needle integrated right into the end of the thread. Okay, so why not? Why not? Why not knot? Okay, the reason why you knot, there are a couple of different reasons. The first reason is for safety. If your necklace breaks, the likelihood that you'll lose a lot of beads is cut down because the very next knot will hold the rest of the beads in place. And then the other reason to use knots is just for design elements. With some designs, you may want to knot between every single bead, although with some beads, that may end up making your necklace look a little too conservative, too traditional, maybe a little bit old-fashioned. So you may choose to make your necklace with 3 beads between each knot or 5 beads between each knot. Your design sense determines the ultimate look of your necklace. So we're going to talk about knotting in just a minute, but first we're going to talk about finishes. And since we're talking about finishing, we're actually talking about starting at the same time. Okay, connections is what I'm going to call them. The beginning and the end of your necklace is called a connection. It's where the clasp goes in. But now we need to talk about the fact that fibers and metals do not get along. They don't like each other very much. It's very important when we're getting to the connection between your fiber and your metal that you protect your fiber because metal tends to degrade and break down the fiber that you're working with. So there are a couple of different ways to make that connection a little bit smoother between your fiber and the metal. The first one that we're going to use is called a bead tip, and they're just a little dome that has a hook on the end of it, and that hook is going to end up being connected to the jump ring, which connects to the clasp on our necklace. We're just going to take our fiber and tying a knot at the end. So we're just going to do a basic overhand knot, but instead of running our tail through the knot once, we're going to run it through the knot twice. And that just makes the knot a little bit bigger so that there's no chance of it slipping through the hole in the bead tip. Then we're just going to take the bead tip, feed that right onto our thread, pull it right on down, and that is the beginning of our necklace. Now from here you want to use a little drop of glue on that knot just to make it perfectly secure. Make sure you don't use any kind of instant dry glue. Make sure you use a glue that's made for jewelry making or for work with fibers because those instant dry glues dry very hard and eventually they will crack and break off and your whole necklace will have to be restrung. So there's our first bead tip, and that will be our connector to the rest of the necklace. Another way to protect your fiber from metal is by using French wire, also known as bullion. Yes, the French wire, it is very French. We are going to use the French wire. And I apologize to the entire nation of France for my bad accent. Okay, the French wire is just a little coil. It's sometimes made out of sterling silver. It's also gold filled. It could be 14 karat gold. It could be silver plated. And it's a very, very fine bit of metal that is coiled very tightly. And we use it to just cover the fiber and protect our fiber from the metal. So what we're going to do is just put this onto our needle just like we would a bead and pull it all the way down to where our bead is. Next, we're going to add on our jump ring. Then we're going to take the needle and run it back through the top of our bead and pull everything tight. And what will happen is this French wire will coil up really beautifully right at the top of our jump ring and just pull everything tight, and we will end up with a perfect little loop to attach our jump ring. Okay, so now we are going to move on to knotting. There are lots of different ways to knot your beads, and I'm going to show you a couple of the most popular ones. The first one we're starting with is a double strand technique. We have started this double strand with a knot and a bead tip at the end. Now what we're going to do is add on our beads and use both of these strands with needles on them to feed. Now this technique is really great if you're working with very large or very heavy beads because it's a very sturdy type of knotting. So we've got our bead on, and all we're going to do is tie a square knot with these two lengths of fiber. So one over this way, one over this way, and we have a perfect square knot. Then you just add on your next bead and knot again just in the same way. Then when you get to the end, put on your bead tip, square knot, and you're finished. Next, we're going to do a single strand knotting technique. So I've got a couple of beads on this string. Imagine that you've got your bead tip or your French wire at the end, and we're just going to start working with this first bead so I can show you how these knots work. And I'm going to push those extra beads over onto the other side. So we've got one knot in place, and again, imagine that's your bead tip. Then we're going to take this string, run it around your fingers and through. Don't tighten your knot, because then what we're going to do is tighten it up just a little bit. Then we're going to take our tweezers, go through the knot, hold quite close to where your bead is. We're going to snug the knot here and then just slide it down right up next to that bead off the end of your tweezers, and you've got a nice close knot. So we're going to do it one more time. We slide our bead down, our pearl down in this case, do an overhand knot, pull it a little bit snug, grab your tweezers through the knot, hold onto your main thread right close to the bead, and just snug your knot down next to the pearl, slide off the tweezers, pull it down, and we have another nice tight knot. The next single strand technique uses a special tool, and this is a knotting tool, and it has a mechanism inside that moves like this. I know it means nothing now, but in a second it'll all make sense. We start with the basic same technique that we did with the last single strand technique. We're moving those extra beads out of the way. We have our bead tip or our French wire at the bottom, and again, do an overhand knot. Now in this case, what we're going to do is slip the stem of this tool onto the knot, and then we pull the knot tight right down next to where our bead is. Then we turn it over, pull our thread over the little notched V part of this tool, pull very tight, and then watch this magic. I'm telling you, this is amazing. Push up, and there we have a perfect knotted bead. I'll show you that one again. I'm telling you, this way of knotting is so easy. I can almost do it while watching TV. Not quite, but almost. So we've tied our overhand knot. We pull it tightly on the spike, right up close to where your bead is. Pull that thread over the V, pulling tightly, nice firm pressure. Push up slowly with your thumb on the tab, and we have another perfect finished knot. Now, if you're not going to be knotting between every bead, then just slide on however many you want between the knots. Do the same technique, overhand on the spike, over the V slot, push up your thumb, and continue with your knotting until you have a finished necklace. So here are a couple of pieces that I have made using the knotting techniques that I've shown you. This is knotted between every single bead, so it is that more sort of classic pearl look. And here is a piece that does not have knots between every single bead. There are probably 5 or 10 between these simple roundels. This necklace has knots around every single rectangle on this strand. Well, we've talked about fibers, we've talked about knots, we've talked about different knotting techniques. It's amazing the things that are available in the world of knotting. Well, basic training is over. You're about to enter active duty. Get out there, make me proud. Make something beautiful. I'll see you next time.
To get step-by-step instructions, download this week's design guide.